All right, here's the thing. I felt like I was going long last session, and long is relative because it's like we got till 8:30. Anyway, it was my feelings. I got in my head. So I skipped 5 things I wanted to say. So I'm going to say them now, and we'll pretend that they were always supposed to be a part of session 3. So I want to close with this. Just kidding. I do want to quickly go over. So as I was thinking through it today, I recognize the idea of training week. I wanted to be practical. I wanted to be as helpful as I could. And so as I was working through finalizing this, I had a thought of there's something that we teach in recovery at Midtown that I want to bring to it. And I don't know if this is something that you guys have included in your recovery. I told Spencer that I'd be glad to give him all of the notes that I have at the recovery as long as he promises to send them back after he makes them better, and he has done that. But I'm not sure if this is a part. So I want to give us 5 ways. So in our discouragement, in our disappointment, we can oftentimes start playing games with our sin, start playing games with our unwise decisions. And I just want to expose those 5 games that we play with our sin in the hopes that they would be helpful. So this session is kind of a hodgepodge. It's like, here are all the last thoughts. I have really bad ADD. And so if you are type A, I'm so sorry. It is what it is. You get what you pay for. I'm very sorry. So I'm going to say a lot of things, and I pray that it's helpful. It's kind of what I do. All right, so here's how I want to get started. These 5 games that we play with our sin. That's how we often respond to our discouragement. The first game that we play is we minimize our sin. First game that we play with our sin is that we minimize it. It oftentimes ends with the phrase, is it really that big of a deal? Is it really that big of a deal? So for example, maybe we feel overcome with loneliness. We feel overcome with discouragement. And we know that a part of our past has included looking to sexual hookups for fulfillment. And so we might minimize our sin by saying, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to deal with that pain. I don't want to deal with that shame. I don't want to deal with the disappointment that's led me to in the past. So I'm just going to go to masturbation instead. At least I'm not hooking up with someone in real life. At least I'm not hurting anybody else, right? First game that we play with our sin, we minimize it. It's not that big of a deal. Second game that we play, we pretend to deal with our sin, but we're not actually addressing it at a heart level. Another name for this might be behavior modification. We pretend to deal with our sin, but we're not actually dealing with it at a heart level. This might be switching coping mechanisms without going to the root source. We're white-knuckling it. Maybe we use religious behavior as a new way to cope. I think I mentioned this last night, but sometimes we can serve in such a way that we avoid any feelings that we have. Or maybe we use serving as a tool to minimize the doubt inside of us. Do I really love God? Do I really belong here? And we can use serving, a good thing, as a way to squash those doubts that spring up. This is the idea of it's going on diets, right? Or using guilt and shame to curb my desire to overeat rather than surrendering that desire to God. We pretend to deal with our sin, but we're not actually addressing it deep down on a heart level. So we minimize our sin, we pretend to deal with it, but not addressing the heart level. The third game that we often play is we avoid sin. We avoid sin. This can go two ways. Maybe we're dodging it. So we're dodging the law and we say, you know what? Tithing is an Old Testament thing. I'm not bound by the law. Therefore, I don't have to be generous. We avoid our sin. Or maybe we relentlessly follow rule following for the sake of self-righteousness rather than health and holiness. We avoid sin. The fourth game that we often play is we mask sin behind other things. I know that this is a silly example, but it's the one that I bring up every year. Have you ever heard the idea of flirt to convert? We date to save. You're dating that guy that you know you have no good reason to date him. But maybe he'll become a Christian if you date him. Another way that we do this, we mask sin behind other things. Gossip in the form of prayer requests. Or the new one, if you're into therapy culture, gossip in the form of processing. I need to process this. And then we gossip. We mask sin behind other things. And then the fifth one, we justify our sin. This is my personal favorite because I'm so good at it. A way that this often will play itself out. I remember in college, had a couple of friends, and they struggled with anxiety, and they wanted to obey the Bible. The Bible says, don't be anxious about anything. So they learned that if they smoked pot, they would feel a lot less anxious. So they justified their sin. I want to obey the Bible, so I'm going to smoke some pot. They justify their sin. So that's the first game, minimizing. We pretend to deal with our sin, but we don't address it at a heart level. We avoid sin. We mask sin behind other things. And fifthly, we justify sin. And the reality is that all of these games, they keep us from the one thing that would actually help us deal with our insecurities, with our discouragement, with our disappointment in our singleness. And that's the idea of confession. So yeah, confession of sin, but also confession is a truthful statement about reality. And so sometimes we need to confess our discouragement. We need to confess our doubt in God's satisfaction. The fact that God would satisfy us completely. We need to confess that. We need to be honest with ourselves and with others in these areas. James 5:16 says, therefore confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person has great power as it is working. So I encourage you to write down those 5 games that we often play. Ask any ways that you identify with that, any ways that you can see this is what I do. And then I want you to share that. I want you to be open and honest with your community group about that, with your church family about that. All right. So lastly, what I want to do, I want to close this out. I want to win us over with the gift of singleness and the advantages that come with it. My hope is that we would leave this place recognizing the advantages and the benefits that if you're single, you have over your non-single friends. So if you've got a Bible, go to 1 Corinthians 7. We're going to go back here. We're going to move a little bit further in the chapter than last night. Go ahead and flip. We're 1 Corinthians 7, looking at verses 29 through 35. 1 Corinthians 7, 29 through 35. First Corinthians 7, 29 through 35. This is God's word. And it says, this is what I mean, brothers. The appointed time has grown very short. From now on, let those who have wives live as though they had none, and those who mourn as though they were not mourning, and those who rejoice as though they were not rejoicing. and those who buy as though they had no goods, and those who deal with the world as though they had no dealings with it. For the present form of this world is passing away. Verse 32, Paul says, I want you to be free from anxieties. The unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to please the Lord. But the married man is anxious about worldly things, how to please his wife, and his interests are divided. And the unmarried or betrothed woman is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to be holy in body and spirit. But the married woman is anxious about worldly things, how to please her husband. I say this for your own benefit, not to lay any restraint on you, to promote good order and to secure your undivided devotion to the Lord. So I want to break that down. Verse 32, Paul says, I want you to be free from anxieties. Because the time is short, because we have work to do, because God's kingdom is coming, and there are folks who do not honor him as God, and he is worthy of their worship. There are folks who do not love him with their hearts, and he deserves their hearts. And the time is short. And so he wants to free us up. And he says, I want you to be free from anxieties. And the unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to please the Lord. Isn't that an interesting juxtaposition he's got there? I want you to be free from anxieties. And the unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord. To be free from anxiety, Paul is saying, is to be anxious about the things of the Lord. How to please the Lord. Pleasing the Lord is to be free from anxieties. The married man, he's anxious about worldly things. He's anxious about how to please his wife. He's in a covenant. He is in a covenant with her, and he has a role to fill. Likewise, the married woman, she's in a covenant with her husband. She's worried about worldly things, how to please her husband. The unmarried woman, she's anxious about the things of the Lord. So I want to talk about these benefits, and I want to win you over to the advantages of singleness. The first benefit that I see is freedom. There is a freedom in your singleness. There is a freedom in your singleness. If you are married, you are bound to someone else. And if you are single, you have a freedom. As a single man, I am free from having to take into consideration my wife and my children as I minister. What that means is I don't have a wife and children to consider. I'm free. I'm free. This kind of gets into what I want to talk about later with friendships, but there's a guy in my life group. He expects to be single his entire life. He is working on getting his doctorate, and he plans to move when he gets into a doctorate program. And he was asking me, he's been in our life group our community groups are called life groups. He's been in our life group for about a little over a year now, maybe 16 months or so. And we were having lunch one day, and he asked me that. I mean, he's very considerate. He's incredibly considerate. And so when he texted me to invite me to lunch, he said, and I've got some things I want to talk about, just, prepping me, which I really appreciate. And so we're sitting down to lunch, and he was like, okay, I've been in life group for a few months now. I think he'd been in life group for maybe 4 or 5 months at this point. I've been in life group for a few months now, and I'm noticing some things that I've never really considered. So you threw yourself a birthday party. And I was like, yeah. It was Taylor Swift themed. Everybody had to come dressed in a Taylor Swift lyric or album or song. It was awesome. I had 3 outfits. It's embarrassing that I said that out loud. And if we could scrub that from the record, that would be helpful. I was very proud of those 3 outfits. Woo. So he was like, yeah, you threw a birthday party. And I was just up in New Jersey, and one of my friends up there threw a birthday party for himself. And I was like, I've never considered that. I was like, well, yeah, I wanted a reason to get around my friends. And so I was like, well, it's my birthday. I'm going to have a birthday party. And I get to be around my friends. And he brought up one of my best friends is also in our life group. And he brought up our friendship. And he said, how did you guys get to be so close? How did you guys get the intimacy that y'all have? And I said, oh, well, we've gotten dinner together once a week for the past 12 years. Once a week for the past 12 years. And he had a tear well up in his eye because he knew what I was about to say. And I was just saying, I said to him, the way that you get the friendships that I've got is you stay in one place for a really long time and you commit to them. And I think about our culture, and I think about people who, younger, I'm 34, younger, so like around my age, but even younger than that, just graduated from college. And the thing to do is to move to a big city for a few years. That's what I was planning to do when I came to Columbia. I mean, I was supposed to be here for 4 years. And I was like 15. I own a house. And it's like, woof, got a cat. It's like, ooh, I got some roots here. And that is how I've got the friendships that I've got. And that plays a role. And so when this guy came into our life group, and for 4 months, he's just blown away by the depth of relationship. He's like, what's the secret sauce? I'm like, commitment. And I told him, he teared up. I was just like, when you go find wherever you're going to get your doctorate, just live there for the rest of your life. Pick a healthy church that teaches the Bible. And when it bothers you, don't leave. When there's a better church around the corner, stay. And that time is going to cause you to build intimacy with folks, to build deep, deep friendships. And I have a freedom to do that. So I have a freedom to have dinner with my friend Wes once a week because neither of us are married. But I've also got another friend named Tom. And we've had dinner together once a week for about 13 years. And after 9 years ago last week, Tom got married to a woman named Kim. And I was like, oh no, I've lost one of my good friends. And I refused to accept that. And that's some of my personality. Like I don't accept things, and I just force my way in. And some people don't have the strength to say no. they don't have the where I'm like, Ryan, I don't want to be your friend. And this is how Tom and Kim is. So now, Tom and Kim, they've got 2 kids. They've got 2 little boys. And in order for us to maintain our weekly Tommy Tuesday, because it happens on Tuesday, for us to maintain Tommy Tuesday, I pick up dinner every Tuesday. And I bring it over, and after the kids have gone to bed, we have dinner. But here's the thing. Now that Henry is getting older, he goes to bed at 8 instead of 7:30. So I get over at 7:30, and now for the first 30 minutes, my Tommy Tuesday not only includes his wife, but includes his oldest son. And this friendship, so when Spencer asked me to come do this, one of the things that he said, can I share this? I don't know if I'm allowed to share this or not. One of the things that he said was, I want someone who is single and enjoys being single. And I was like, I mean, I think this is why I don't walk around with the awareness of like, I really enjoy being single. But I recognize these friendships, This is a part of the sustainability that I've built in my life to be single long term. Doesn't mean I'm always going to be single. Doesn't mean that I've sworn off dating. Just means for me, I've got these friendships, and they've taken years to build. They have taken years to build. So I've got this intimacy with friends, but here's another benefit of singleness, is I have an intimacy with Jesus that some of my married friends don't get. I'm grateful for it. And I'm not great at it. I'm not perfect at it by any means. But as I'm interacting with friends who are married, and I've got a couple other friends that I would say I am both close to husband and wife, right? A lot of folks are surprised that I'm close to my friends' wives, and it's like, yeah, I'm not going to. The phrase that I would say is, I'm not going to let them marry someone I don't want to hang out with. But of course, they get to make their own decisions. But I've noticed that one of the advantages of singleness is I am forced into finding an intimacy with Christ that my married friends are not always forced into finding. So what I mean by that is if I'm having a really hard day, I go home and it's me. I don't necessarily get to walk in to somebody who wants to give me a hug and welcome me home. But what I do get is the reality and the knowledge that God is with me. Even though I live alone, God's always with me. And I've got married folks that I'm friends with, that I'm really close with. And when they have a hard day, the first place they go to is their spouse. And they miss out on giving Jesus the first fruits of their pain. They miss out on giving Jesus the first fruits of their loneliness. Because they've got someone to share it with. Someone present. In my singleness, the Lord has shown his sufficiency over and over and over again. And I'm never happy about it until after the fact, right? Like, when you need the Lord to show his sufficiency, you're not in a good place. I'm never happy about it in the moment. But after the fact, I can look back and be like, wow, he was with me the whole time. Last night, I brought this up. Something about, I can't remember the specific question, but single people need to be around married people, and married people need to be around single people. Because single folks, your singleness displays the sufficiency of Christ in ways that married folks don't get to see every day. And they need to be reminded of the sufficiency of Jesus in your life. So it's not just a one-way street that you need community. They need community too. Because in their marriages, they're tempted to believe that their spouse is all they need. And they need the freedom that they can look at your life and they can see Jesus is enough. And that means he's enough for me too. So we've got intimacy and friendship. We've got intimacy in Christ. Speaking of friendship, so I mentioned this last night. I'm a big proponent of this. I think a lot of us are waiting to get married to start our lives fully, right? So the idea of going on a vacation with your friends, maybe they're single too, maybe some of them are married too. For my 30th birthday, I went out to Nevada for my birthday, and shared a hotel room with my friend Wes and Tom and Kim in the hotel room. And it was just like, this is great. This is what we do, because this is how we travel on a budget. We don't get to have our own room. There was a blog post that a friend was reading, and what did I say? Okay, this was a 3-night vacation to Las Vegas, not needing to purchase a tent for privacy. Yes, I made fun of you for that. Still am going to. Thank you. Glad to. Yeah. No, we're good. So friend was reading a blog, and blogger is a single man, and he said, don't wait on marriage to start going on vacations. You should have an annual vacation, even if you're a single person. And so this idea of friend cruise was kindled. This is January. I guess it was about September of 2014. But January 2015, we took our first friend cruise. My first cruise. I'd never been on a cruise. That's not what my family did. I thought that they were a lot more expensive than they were. There's a cruise company called Carnival. I affectionately refer to it as Walmart on the water. Very reasonably priced, and very much people of Walmart on this cruise, which I gladly join. Like, that's not a bad thing. I just want to set your expectations. If you're on Carnival, it's like going to Walmart. So we started this trend. This tradition, and what we were doing for months and months, we were planning it for months, and just inviting folks to be a part of it. Up until 2020, we went every single January. And there was anywhere between, some years we went, there was only 4 of us. Some years we went, and there was 12 of us. So it was a mix of different sizes. Sometimes we had married couples join us. The one thing, but the friend and I who started it, we were both in ministry, and so one thing is we're not going to have care issues on the boat. So if you're a care issue, love ya, you're not invited to friend cruise. And kids, sorry, love ya, but that's one of the freedoms of being single. So, but we've got friends who had their parents come and stay for a week while we went on a cruise together. We planted a church in Charlotte, and they've continued the friend cruise tradition. It's been awesome to see. So I just asked, what are the things in your life that you're waiting for until you get married? What are the things in your life that you're waiting for? Do you need to wait for those things? Or can you go ahead and start living a full adult life, even as a single person? I think I mentioned last night waking up alone on Christmas. That was something that I was really fearful of. So when I was in a good spot emotionally, I was like, I'm gonna be intentional. I'm gonna plan to wake up alone on Christmas morning. I had plans at 9, so it was like I had something to do, but I was gonna have some me time Christmas morning. Something that I was fearful of, I kind of took charge of it. I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna plan for it. Freedom in time. A couple of months ago, after recovery, one night, a recovery leader called me, and he said there was a man in his group who shared at recovery that he had made an attempt on his life that morning. I was grateful that he failed. I was grateful that he showed up to recovery that night. I was grateful that he shared that with his group and was honest. And I was also grateful that as soon as this leader called me and told me that, I was able to get into my car and drive over to his apartment and sit with him for 3 hours while we processed and prayed through and got him the help that he needed. I didn't have to worry about taking my kids to school the next morning. I didn't have to worry about my wife being frustrated that I was leaving at 11 o'clock at night. I had freedom in that moment. At our church, our work days are Sunday through Thursday, and so Fridays and Saturdays we have off. Saturdays are usually my Sabbath. I know for a lot of our other pastors who have kids, part of their Sabbath includes spending time with their kids. Because I don't have kids, I have freedom on Fridays to go make a hospital visit if somebody needs me to come see them. If somebody we've got a woman in our church who has had some real tough health stuff, and she seems to be, she used to be a recovery leader, and I keep nagging her. I was like, listen, if you don't want to lead recovery, you don't have to go through all this. You just tell me you don't need to lead recovery. It's fine. Try to joke with her a little bit to lighten the mood. But there's been 3 Fridays in the past couple of months that I've been able to go to the hospital to visit with her. I didn't have to change childcare pickup. I didn't have to disappoint my wife. There's freedom that my singleness has in my ministry. I think about my friend James. He is currently in Florida, in Naples area. He went down with the Baptist disaster relief folks because he had this week off of work. He doesn't have a wife, he doesn't have kids, and he's freed up to serve people that he's never met who've just had their houses completely destroyed by this hurricane that happened a couple weeks ago. James has the freedom to do that because of his singleness. He has the freedom to serve and to be the hands and feet of Jesus because of his singleness in ways that he wouldn't if he were married, if he had kids. Freedom from money. So one of the things I talk about in premarital counseling is we go through budgeting. And it seems like if you add one person to the budget, your budget should double, right? That's never how it works. It at least triples. You add one more person to the family and all of a sudden you have a lot less money than you thought you would. I don't have that constraint. So I heard about a need recently. I was able to quickly make the decision, I'm going to give this money away. I don't need this. I wanted it. It's fine. I was saving up for some earbuds. I washed my Google earbuds, and it's like, oh, I gotta get some new ones. You know what? I don't have to talk about that with my wife. I don't have to take something away that I was saving up for my kids. I was just free to give it away. There's freedom to be had. I brought this up earlier. Married folks need to see the sufficiency of Christ in our lives. Single folks, married folks need to see the sufficiency of Christ in our lives. So I want to ask you, who do you need to invite over? Who in your life do you need to have over for dinner? Single people, I'm asking you this. Who do you need to have over for dinner? I've got a super simple recipe. I call it Ryan pasta. It's like spaghetti plus. I mean, it's nothing. It's easy to make, and it's easy for me to invite folks over to my house. And I used to make the excuse, well, I'll invite folks as long as I don't have kids. Because my house isn't really set up for kids. You know, it's not safe or whatever. I don't know what that means, but I've got corners and stuff. You don't want kids around corners. Yeah. Until my friend Ty was like, we're not going to get a babysitter. We're just bringing the kids. I was like, well, what if they don't like Ryan pasta? She's like, they'll eat it. I was like, okay. What if they get hurt? It's like, they'll heal. It's like, all right. So, single folks, who do you need to invite over? Who do you need to host and show hospitality to? Married people. Who are the married couples? Who are the families with kids that you need to invite over so that they get the opportunity to see the sufficiency of Christ in your life? That's a challenge that I want to leave you with. I want, if you're single, I want you to invite a married couple or a family over with their kids. I want you to cook them dinner. Cook them dinner. Not just pick it up. Not have it Grubhubbed. Cook them dinner. Invite them over. If your conscience allows, open a good bottle of wine. Show hospitality to them. There's this, yeah, and I'd also ask, what are the excuses that you tend to make for why that wouldn't work? Can't cook. YouTube. No kitchen table. Don't need a table. Got a hand. Got a lap. If you sit down on the couch, got a lap. Floors are free. What are other excuses? Now, that's a thing. So, the homeless man in my house. Yeah, that's a thing. Is there a kitchen here? Yeah. Is there a stove here? Yeah. I bet Spencer would let you rent out the space or something. There's tables. There's tables here. There's a microwave. And for real, you can do a microwave meal if that's your excuse. I think back to the day, there's a guy in my life group named William Quarles. He's moved away now, but he was under contract for a home, and he lost his job. And he called, and then this was like 7 or 8 o'clock after I'd been doing an event at church. You know what I was free to do? Go hang out with him for a few hours. Sit with him. I didn't have words to fix what was wrong. I didn't have a job to offer him. But I got to sit with him. I got to be present with him when he was feeling real insecure. So there's a lot of freedoms that we have as single folks. We also have a lot of opportunities. We have a lot of opportunities. I want you to be free from anxieties, Paul says. The unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord. To be free from anxieties, to be anxious about the things of the Lord, about his kingdom coming. A few months ago, heard about one of our missionaries who's going through a crisis. It was a lot easier for me, because I didn't have kids, to be able to hop on a 4 a.m. Skype call to encourage him. Just to encourage him. If you're single, it's a lot easier for you to go visit some missionaries in the field, just to encourage them. There are missionaries who are they are the only Christians in their area. My friend Daniel was a missionary somewhere, and he said it was 45 minutes, 45-minute drive for him to find a community. That means on Sundays, they had to go 45 minutes to worship with other believers. Single folks, you have a lot more freedoms, and you've got a lot more money, expendable resources, where you can go and you can be present with some of the missionaries. I think about, I am a morning person. I'm not a night owl. I'm not a night owl. It's bad when I'm up late. I don't think straight for a few days. And I'm not good at thinking straight in general, so I need all the help I can get. But I've got some friends. My friend Grigsby, he can't go to sleep before 2. You know what he has the opportunity to do? Befriend bartenders who are working late at night. He can be a regular at a place where nobody else. If he's got kids, he can't do that. If he's got a wife, he can't do that. Single folks, you have freedom and you have advantages on the mission field that married folks do not have. So if you're a night owl, I want to invite you to stay up late for the glory of God. I want you to see how you can use your singleness to bring God's kingdom home, to make Columbia and Casey and West Columbia look a little bit more like heaven. I don't want us to begrudge our singleness in such a way that we miss out on the advantages, that we miss out on the benefits. And I don't want us to waste our singleness away. So with that, last thing I want to encourage you with, and I think this is something that, from what I've heard, this group doesn't need much encouragement. Showing up on Sundays, showing up early, serving. Our host team at Midtown, it wouldn't exist without single folks. And we want married folks, we want couples, we want kids to serve on our host team. But the reality is, I just wouldn't exist without single folks. We've got single folks who give up their Sunday morning, the early portion of their Sunday morning, to serve and to welcome our city into worship. So that's what I want to encourage you to do. I want you to be leaders in your groups, to host, to be hospitable, that the single folks at this church will be the most hospitable group of people, to serve in production, to being here every Sunday, to making gathering together a priority, and to show up early. So with that, I'm going to close this in prayer, and thanks for letting me be here. It's been an honor. Let me pray. Jesus, I thank you that you do not, you don't look down on singleness the way that we tend to. God, you're aware of the advantages. You're aware of the benefits. You're aware of the freedom that we have. God, would you give us hearts that desire to use our freedom to spread your good news to all the corners of this earth? God, would you show us the ways in which we can use our singleness, not for selfish gain, but for ways that we can give our lives away in the ways that our married friends, they can't, because they're worried about worldly things. They're bound in covenant to one another. God, would you allow us to see the ways that we can use our singleness? We can use the freedom that we have to bring your kingdom come. God, I thank you for this church. I thank you for their generosity in providing a space and a time for this conference. I thank you for the folks who have given faithfully so that they'll be able to have coffee and snacks. We'll be able to have the lights on. Thank you for the generosity that you've poured out on these folks through your people. I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.